we've spent so much time talking about the Strait of Hormuz, spent so much time talking about the deal, the memorandum. There's been much less talk of the 90 million Iranian people who, should be the focus. Of those that you're talking to now, what are they thinking about the war, about what their country looks like coming out of it?
Yeah, look, obviously, as you mentioned, it's 90 million people. There's sometimes 90 million different views on events. But I think for a lot of Iranians, this war didn't actually start in late February when the US and Israel attacked. It really started in January for them, and in particular, January 8th and 9th, when hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of Iranians came out onto the streets protest and to, in large part, to demand a new form of government. And what they saw was a government that responded to them really with military-grade weapons, killing thousands of people in response. And ever since then, I think they have felt like a lot of Iranians, not all, but certainly sort of this deep desire for the government to change, for some people almost at any cost. And so for some portion of Iranians, when the war began in late February, there was a hope that perhaps, even at great cost, this may lead to a better country, a better outcome eventually for them. And I think for a large portion of those Iranians, they feel a great sense of disappointment and even betrayal at what has actually occurred and kind of what the regime has been able to gain out of this war in the last few months.
Now, as you say, millions were on the streets, and these weren't armed citizens. They obviously understood the risk that they were taking because they've seen this playbook before from the Islamic Republic. Why, months later, are we not seeing any more demonstrations? Why are we not seeing the kind of outrage to a regime that has proven that it can and will continue to be very brutal towards its own people? And the economic suffering, of course, has only gotten worse through this period.
You're absolutely right that it's nothing new for the Islamic Republic to use violence to suppress protests. But I do think the scale of what we saw in January was orders of magnitude worse than even some of the most brutal responses in the past. Even if we take kind of the most conservative estimate of the number of killings, around 6,500, which has been verified by one human rights group, that is still quite a bit more than previous rounds of protests in 2017, 2019, back in 2009 or 1999. So I think there is a sense of trauma, shock, great fear still lingering in the last few months. And then the regime has also gone to great pains to make very clear that it controls the streets. During the war itself, and even in a few weeks after the initial ceasefire in April, there were kind of nightly street rallies where supporters of the regime would come out with loudspeakers and music and chants, just kind of making clear that, don't even think about protesting if you're against this government. There have been these huge rallies for different events, so that it's been made very clear to opponents of the government that they have no place in Iran's public square right now. However, as you mentioned, the economy, which was the spark of these protests back in late December, has only continued to get worse. And I don't see right now that changing. And I believe that we're going to continue to see certainly discontent. And historically in Iran in the last decade, that has often led to street protests and demonstrations.